Apex Online Racing is sponsored by Elgato, who created this lovely Stream Deck. For more information about the Stream Deck, the link is in the description below.
Hello everyone and welcome to Apex Online Racing Hype Energy Formula 1 League here. We are here for round number 11 here for the Canadian Grand Prix. I am Fizzymon once again, and alongside me today is the return of Jacob Hancox, aka Aladar. So I'm going to be welcoming him into the commentary box once again. And it's glad to have you here, but before we go ahead and go with the proper introductions and everything, just want to let you guys know that we are currently continuing to have a little bit of desync issues, so the lobby is getting restarted a second time. So just bear with us. But welcome, Jacob. How does it feel to be back?
Yeah, thank you. I'm really glad to be back, and I'm sure your voices or your vocal cords will probably appreciate having someone alongside you as well. Although you have been managing it pretty well, I must say, over the course of this season. But yeah, no, a couple more races left in the season, and I'm glad to be back here at AOR, where my commentary journey actually started probably about 3 years ago now. So yeah, good to be back. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should definitely be a very fun one, and we do have a few new drivers on the grid today. In the likes of Side Max Motorsports. Is that the team name, if I'm correct? Risque?
Yeah, Sidemax Motor Works, I think, which is a slightly odd name. Yeah, I think a lot of people say Motorsports. But yeah, I think I believe Risky is a Sidemax Motorworks Academy driver, unless I'm mistaken. He's a driver I actually know a little bit about because over in another league I do commentary on, he just came top of the second tier of that league by a country mile. He won the championship with a couple of races left to go in that season. And then he jumped up in our most recent race. He jumped up to the top tier for the last race of the season. And he was right on the pace straight away, almost as fast as the likes of Christian Sendel and Jan Fehler, who are also racing in that league. A couple of tenths shy of them, but we're talking about Spa that race was at. So that's a long lap to only be a couple of tenths behind the likes of Jan Fehler and Christian Sendel. So watch out for him to maybe make some waves in the race today.
That definitely does sound very enticing. Speaking of championship implications, so last time out in Mexico, Lenny PNR sealed the Drivers' Championship with a very dominating performance coming from the back of the grid, finishing P2, battling our former champion in time 97. The two of them had a very nice battle last week. Unfortunately, the battle won't carry through into this week as Lenny is not racing this week, but we do have Tom back, and we've got drivers like Risque here, who is new, who should bring a lot of pace to the grid. We also have a new driver in Scars, another Sidemax Motorworks driver. Do you happen to have any background on him, Jacob, or is he just going to...
Yes, I do, actually. As it happens, I do have a little bit. And again, I'd put him in a similar sort of bracket to Risky. Maybe just a little bit above where Risky is, particularly in qualifying. I think Scars is a very impressive driver. One thing I have picked up with Scars so far from watching him is he does struggle off the line. He struggles with his race starts and often loses significant places on the opening lap of a race. So that's going to be something to watch out for. Whether he can just get the power down onto the track through those rear tires on that race start could be a big difference maker for him. But at least in qualifying, I'd expect to see him performing pretty well.
All right, that is definitely interesting to note, and hopefully we'll have a very exciting qualifying session, which we will have underway shortly, like we said before. We're rebuilding the lobby one last time, and then we will be good to go. And we'll have a weather forecast coming to us as well once the lobby does start. I do have Jan Fehler messaging me once that is ready, so fingers crossed for the drivers it's dry, but a wet race, I think that could be enticing.
Absolutely. A wet race is always an enticing prospect, particularly if it's wet to dry or dry to wet. I definitely prefer that to just a flat out wet race, because I do think that particularly in the game, shall we say, on F1 2020, when you get a situation where it is just a completely wet race, often the lack of DRS makes overtaking nigh on impossible, and the drivers don't necessarily make enough mistakes at this sort of level that it becomes super fascinating because drivers are spinning out all over the place. So I think what you like to see is intermediate conditions to wet conditions to intermediate conditions to dry conditions, something like that, something that necessitates plenty of tire changes, a lot of confusing strategy calls that the drivers have to make on the fly, and also a lot of skillful driving in changeable conditions. And I think that's where drivers can shine, both in terms of their overall pace and their mastery of the car, and also in having their brain switched on for the strategy aspect of things as well.
Yeah, so I'm definitely curious to see what the weather will be, as the lobby setting is still dynamic, even though we did just previously load into a lobby with dry qualifying. I don't know what the race would have been, but it's going to re-roll the dice once again, and we'll get to see what kind of weather that Mother Nature has for us. The drivers are readying up right now, so qualifying will be beginning momentarily. Now, qualifying strategies. So I haven't commentated a race over Canada probably since last fall, and I know there's a lot of different strategies you can go around here. Are we thinking everyone's going to go for the softs, or do we think anyone kind of pushes for mediums in qualifying and maybe even goes for a one-stop? Do you think that's a possibility today?
I think it certainly is a possibility. I do think that the soft tires don't necessarily last as long as people would like at the beginning of the race here in Canada. But, you know, there's a lot of different aspects. I mean, one thing is, of course, 15 drives in the field gives you a slightly different perspective to if you had, say, a full grid of 20 drivers or a field of fewer drivers. You know, you can make adjustments according to that, because if you have a full grid of drivers, for instance, having to take that pit stop early loses you more track positions than it does when the field is a little bit smaller. But this is still a sort of medium-sized field, so it's still going to be a concern for the drivers. We'll have to wait and see. We'll get a good idea of it once they go out for their first few laps. Once again, looking very overcast here as we get into the qualifying lobby itself. And yeah, potentially we might see drivers getting out there as quick as possible to get a lap time in, because it does look like rain might be in the offing, but we don't know for certain yet.
Well, I am getting the message now. So right now it's dry on track. The weather forecast for today, as soon as it decides to get fully sent, dry quali, dry race start, possibility of rain at the end of the race though. So there we have it.
Perfect then. That's the sort of situation. That's the changeable weather that I was talking about earlier. I think that's what you really like to see. Looks like now a couple of drivers are getting out there on track. I believe Taisu, the pole in the Red Bull, is going to be the first one out for their initial outlap here on the Ile de Notre Dame, I believe it's called, unless I'm very much mistaken, here in Montreal. And a few drivers now are getting out there on track. One driver I want to quickly talk about, one driver to watch, will be Norbert Jakob here in the Racing Point team for today. Norbert drove a couple of races earlier this season, I believe, and is one of only 4 race winners in this season of AOR. So watch out for him. He might be right up there with the likes of Tom 97 for the race win overall.
I think he will definitely be very competitive today. I mean, he showed a lot of pace towards the end of last season, had some great battles with Tom and Jan. And Christian as well, when Christian had the pace right last season. But then this season around, the few races he's been, that he's raced at, he's done very well. Now, Suzuka was one of the races that unfortunately was not streamed, and he went out and actually won that race off pure pace over the legs of Lenny, Jan, and Christian. So yeah, I would agree. He's definitely one to watch out for. But as of right now, everyone on track with the soft tire, and like you said, Tisu leading the way. And we'll see what these first kind of flying laps go through. Do you want to walk us through a lap with one of these drivers?
Yeah, let's see what Tisu is going to be doing then in the Red Bull, as they are going to be the first ones to cross the line. So we'll give them the honor of taking us on a proper hot lap tour of the Canadian Grand Prix circuit. As we enter turn 1, leaving a little bit of margin on the inside there. You can cut turn 1 a little bit more than Tisu did, but really nice using the curve to railroad through turn 2. Now we have a heavy braking zone of turn 3, a brief but heavy braking zone, I should say. And once again, using the curbs as much as possible through this section. Now into turn 6. Really, really tricky corner, because here the traction for turn 7 is incredibly difficult to find. Tisu seems to have done it without too much difficulty, using all the road on the exit of 7 as well to make sure that that was easy as possible. Very deep there into 8, and that was almost an invalidation. Tisu managing to hold on to it there. but that will have cost the pole a significant amount of time in the middle sector. Tentative down into first gear for this hairpin here. Very, very smooth, but maybe just a little bit too tentative, perhaps then, from the Red Bull driver. DRS open as we head down the first of the halves of this straight, I suppose you could call it, as we enter now the final chicane. Final challenge for the drivers. So easy to invalidate here, so easy to clip the wall. But Tisu does neither and will be able to register a lap time here of a 109.382 to start off proceedings. And I tell you what, I don't think that's going to be challenging for pole.
I definitely agree with that statement. It definitely was not a pole caliber lap. Johan displaced him immediately, and there goes Scars with the 108.5. But I think Tisu left a lot of time on the table. I mean, he didn't seem like he really pushed through that final chicane. I feel like he could have carried a lot more speed through that. And then we saw through turn 8, he just went way too deep, and that cost him at least a good quarter of a second at the very least. But Risque on pole provisionally with a 108.4. But where is Tom on track? Tom is coming through the first sector right now, just starting his hot lap. Meanwhile, I believe Jan is starting a lap not too far behind. So I believe the real contenders, who we would just call favorites, are currently on a lap right now. Tom doing an 18.9 of first sector, so that's 0.3 faster than the other Red Bull, with Deads joining. So there we go. He'll be a 16th driver, the other Brazilian. Glad to see that he can make it today.
Very, very strong time there from Maestro Hoffi up into second. Briefly, it was into first, but Norbert Jakob has sniped that away. But there's a very, very small amount of time between Norbert's lap time and that of Maestro Hoffi. And then there's a big gulf between Hoffi down to Risky and then Kev Genetics in fourth. So that's really very impressive stuff then from the Ferrari driver. He might be one to watch as we go on throughout this qualifying session with a very solid opening exchange. Tom 97 then heading into the final couple of corners, doesn't invalidate, bumps the wall there on the exit of the chicane, crosses the line and goes fastest, and by a fair margin as well. A 107.905, the first driver into the 107s. Tom 97 throwing down the gauntlet there. What can Jan Thaler do to respond?
Not much, because he hasn't validated his lap. Now, one thing I noted with Tom's lap, he was 0.7 faster than the other Red Bull through the middle sector. So that just goes to show how much more speed Tom was able to carry through that hairpin and final chicane. I mean, there was a 0.7 difference, and there was a 1.4 seconds by the time they crossed the line. So it just goes to show that if you can go all or nothing through that final chicane, there is so much time there on the table for some of these drivers to go ahead and steal. And actually, Norbert Jakob just improved. He went 2 laps back-to-back on the same set of tires, and he just outside the 107s, just at a very low 108. So good lap by the Hungarian to start the session.
Yeah, and that wasn't even his 3 best sectors as well. He set his best middle sector on the first of the 2 laps that he went for. So there's still more time for him to find. Track improvement obviously means there's probably going to be more time for everyone to find, but even on an equal track, Norbert has more time that he can find here. So that's going to be refreshing, at least for him, because he knows he can do it. You know, the worst situation, obviously if you make a mistake, you don't want to make mistakes. You don't want to have slightly off laps. But at least if you do make a mistake on a lap, you can identify it and say, if I don't do that again, my lap will be fast. And it's much better to have that sort of perspective than if you've just done what you think is going to be your best lap and it's only good enough for 6th or something. And then that's when you start to really struggle, mentally speaking, because you don't know what left you have to give. So, yeah, that's good news for Norbert, at least, that he will be able to continue pushing on in that regard. Still shy of Tom 97's time, and it's mainly the final sector where Tom is getting the advantage. We saw that he clunked the wall on the exit of the final chicane, and I wonder if that just allowed him to take a bit more speed through that section, and maybe the wall didn't punish him in the way it sometimes would.
Yes, that is very interesting, and so it's definitely more time there. But also, something to note, Johan, Fernandez, and Baiblue all on the medium tire right now. Johan's best was on the softs, granted, so he set a banker with that 109.2. He might be trying to start on the mediums, maybe go for a one-stop, or just maybe even hold on till the rain. Not sure what he's going to do, but the current guys on a lap, Deads and Patrick, were not using battery at all, so I'm sure we'll see them actually have a good respective lap this time around, with Deads going through the first sector. Let's see what the Brazilian can do in the Williams, joining late in the session, but that's fine. He's going to do a 19.4 first sector, so he's not really pushing as hard as we would assume from the Brazilian, he's had some relatively good performances this season. It's been up and down, with his high being Bahrain short. So we'll see what the Brazilian can do now, going through turn 8 and 9.
Ooh, that had me cringing for a moment there. I thought he was going to be hitting the wall, but he managed to avoid it. Good news then for the Brazilian as he enters the third and final sector of the lap. First sector was about half a second away from the likes of Tom 97 and Norbert Jakob, so not necessarily finding a lot through there. Middle sector losing a little bit less time, more like 4/10 from Tom 97. So at the moment we're looking like we're probably going to end the lap about a second down on the current provisional pole time, unless this has been a rocket ship of a final sector. And let's see then as Deads crosses the line, and yeah, it does indeed go slowest of all so far, a 109.3, so it's even more than a second shy of Tom 97. Not the best opening effort then from Deads. He won't be too pleased with that.
Yeah, and then Christian Senda was out on a lap, or at least an out lap, and then decided to immediately come back into the pits. He didn't invalidate his lap. I don't think he had any spin or anything. So not sure what the German's doing, what he's got in store, but he has not set a lap time yet. So maybe some of these guys might not be pushing as hard as they'd want. Maybe they're going to go for the hards and just hold out to the rain. You know, that's not something neither of us have really mentioned. So I wonder if that's the strategy by some of these guys.
It could well be a possibility. I can tell you that Christian Sendo did invalidate his first attempt, and that second attempt he was about half a second off of his previous attempt in the first sector alone. So I think he's probably just backed out of it thinking that this lap is not good enough. He was just unhappy with the way the lap was going. Jan Fehler is now out there on a flying lap. A few other drivers have also improved. F1 Racer has moved up in a 5th, and Scars has slotted in ahead of both of the Mercedes there. And Risky has also gone through for a second lap time. That's what's put him up in 6th for the time being. But yeah, Jan Fehler now entering the third and final sector of the lap. His first sector was purple. That was the fastest we've seen from anyone so far in this session. Middle sector, good, not outstanding, but certainly good. So if this final sector is nailed, we could see him also dropping into the 107s, but he invalidates in the first part of the chicane. He'll cross the line anyway, and it's a 108 flats. That would have been good enough for third. But unfortunately for him, he just took too much curb in the final corner, and that will mean that he can't even go on this lap either. And with only just under 8 minutes left in the session, Jan Fehler will be feeling a little bit of pressure at this stage.
Yeah, definitely. That lap was a masterclass for the most part. It was basically, I mean, outside of the final sector, those first 2 sectors, granted, was not a purple second sector, but he basically was matching Tom 97's pace at the sector mark. But to see him just have a mediocre third sector and then go ahead and invalidate it, really not the best thing that could have happened to the German. Speaking of invalidating, Meister Hoffy was on a pretty good lap and then just invalidated it through turn number 8.
Yeah, he was about a 10th down on Norbert and Tom in the opening sector, and at the moment he's about a 10th down on Norbert overall with his best lap time. Yeah, Maestro Hoffy, of course, should be expecting to improve on that lap time, and with such a good banker lap, the Ferrari driver should be feeling pretty confident. Might have had the wind knocked out of them just a little bit there with that invalidation, but plenty of time to slow down, build up the battery, and then going again. Although it did take a heavy chunk of curb in the final corner there, so I wonder if we've re-invalidated for the next lap. Nope. Maestro Hoffy will be able to start this next flying lap without any issue.
Yes, we'll have to see what the Ferrari driver can do. Norbert Jakob is on a lap. He's purple through the first sector by over a 10th. Let's see what the Hungarian can do now. Going through turn 8, can he keep it valid through the chicane? He does, just barely, using all of the track there. It's going to be the end of sector 2. It's a 39.9. He's 4/10 up on his lap. The Hungarian is flying right now. What kind of lap time will this be? It looks like a pretty nice and tidy hairpin. Now on the run, down the long back straight and into the final chicane. He's got some clean air, no one to really distract him. Just has to nail these final 2 corners, carrying as much speed as possible. Keeps it out of the wall and keeps it valid. What's the time going to be as he crosses the line? It's a 107.6. What a lap by Norbert Jakob.
That is sweet as you like from the artist formerly known as Padlo Futes. Fantastic lap then from the Hungarian to snatch pole away by a healthy margin. I wonder what Tom 97 is thinking about that one right now as Maestro Hoffy comes pretty close once again to Norbert Jakab's time. Just like last time around, he's about a 10th down on the Hungarian, but he's right there or thereabouts. Fantastic qualifying from him so far. Tom97 is yet to respond, though. He is playing it cool, just waiting in the pit lane. He's just leaving the pits now with 5 minutes and 20 seconds remaining in the session. I believe he's only attempted one flying lap so far. That was good enough to hold pole position for a long time, but now he finds himself only in third. Christian Sendel has registered a lap time, and that was only a 1:08.0 from him. So he'll be slightly disappointed not to have also squeaked ahead of the Red Bull driver there. And a few other drivers going to be on flying laps now. Risky is out there on one, and he's finding a lot of improvement as well through the first couple of sectors. Deads has improved by a significant amount. He's moved up into fifth. Corsac joining the session, so hopefully he'll be able to get a lap in before this comes to an end as well. But now Risky heading down the back straight towards the final chicane.
Yes, we'll send Corsac back up just in a second. Risky, though, he was almost 4/10 up. He eats a lot of curb, though, on the exit of the final corner. He's still valid on my screen, but what's it going to be across the line? It's a 1:08.0. So I think he hit too much curb there. I think that could have been a 1:07 high. He might have been able to get on that second row at the very least.
Yeah, I think he was looking at the second row for sure there. He was 3 and a bit tenths up in the first couple of sectors. By the end of the lap, he was only just over 2 tenths up on his previous best time. And I'm sure that he lost all of that time in that final corner when he just took way too much curve. Thankfully, the game was generous to him and allowed him to continue without the invalidation. But yeah, that was not the best way to take that final corner from Risky. And again, that's the sort of thing I was talking about earlier. He knows where that mistake is. He knows that he can improve on that.
Yes, now speaking of the whole Mercedes team, F1 Racer jumped up to 4th. He did a 1:08.004. We did miss that one, but both Mercedes drivers looking very strong today so far. So curious to see how they do on their final runs. Most of the drivers in the pits now getting ready for their final one. Corsac out on track, the Chinese driver able to make it. We might be able to see him. He's on mediums, so I don't think he'll put it on the front row with his teammate per se, but he might be able to start a decent way up the order. But it's a relatively close qualifying session. I mean, look at the gap from 4th to 6th, less than a tenth, and yeah, I think we're in for a treat here in these last 3 minutes.
Oh, I tell you what, Scars is being incredibly generous to Tom97 right now. Tom was up over 3 tenths in the first couple of sectors and just got a healthy slipstream from the Haas car down the back straight. He nails the final chicane, maybe a little bit tentative on the exit, but no matter. This should still be very fast, and indeed it is. A 1:07.467 moves Tom straight back to the top of the order. Norbert and Maestro Hoffi look like they pulled the wool on Tom97, but he pulls it straight back off. Lovely driving then from the Englishman in that Red Bull. And now Scars himself has started a flying lap along with Dent. Both of them out there. Fernandez as well, yet to register a lap time in the second Williams. And Corsac is also out there on mediums.
Scars purple through the first sector, and that was just after Tom's miracle lap. Now, he's not going to get that slipstream in the third sector, but what can the Haas driver do in his first race here out in AOR Tier 1? Coming up to the end of Sector 2, what's his split going to be? A 40.3, so he lost a lot of time in the middle sector there after going purple in the first one, but Scars still slightly improving right now, and even a slice of improvement should get him P7 from Deads.
Yeah, that's at least, you know, that's a rare... It's going to be a moving goalpost, I will say, because Deads is also out there on a flying lap right now. Let's see how well Scars can take this final chicane. Might be tempted to cut it, but no, that was lovely stuff from the South African. And that should have found him at least another 10th, I would imagine. He crosses the line. It's found him more than that. A 1:07.922 moves him onto the second row of the grid, but only temporarily. 1 minute and 30 remaining in this qualifying session. Deads has backed out of his attempt. He's about to go again. Corsac comes across the line only with a 1:11.5 on those medium tires. It looks like he is definitely going to be running the contra strategy by Blue. Max AMG and Jan Thaler all also out there on the mediums. They are going firmly in that direction.
Yeah, trying to wait as long as they can to have to pit. I mean, even if they have to pit once off the mediums, they can pit onto a set of softs, and they should be mighty quick, while these other guys up front guaranteed to have to pit off those softs because they won't make it to any kind of late race rain. But we'll see what happens now. Driver starting to cross the line. Is that Christian Sendel currently crossing the line? Yes. Alfa Romeo driver, one of the final drivers to actually start their flying lap. But let's keep an eye now on the timing tower. Kev Genetics, did he just improve on a lap? No, he just invalidated. So I must have missed that. Do apologize.
Indeed. So now we have Maestro Hoffi on a lap, we have Norbert on a lap, we have Christian Sendel on a lap. 3 drivers that could potentially be in the conversation for the front couple of rows on the grid here. Let's see how they're going to be doing. Maestro Hoffi is the leader of those 3 in terms of track position right now, and he's just pumping it towards the end of Sector 2, and he just kicked up a bit of grass there on the exit of Turn 9. And he's only finding a fraction now. He's not found enough through the first couple of sectors. This is going to have to be an absolute peach of a final sector for him to be looking to take anything away from either Tom 97 or Norbert Jakob. The checkered flag flies. Tom 97 and Scars, they are done for this session. Deds has managed to pop himself up into 4th. Let's see Maestro Hoffi. He invalidates in the final corner, so he will not be able to improve. Christian Sendel now. He is avoiding the wall of champions, pressing the throttle into the floor, crossing the line, and he goes into 4th with a 107.8. Norbert Jakob, he's going to be a little bit further down the road, and he's improving at least by about a 10th through the first couple of sectors. Let's see if he can find anything more. As Patrick moves up into 3rd now, Norbert Jakob, can he take pole? Yes, he can. A 107.400 from the Hungarian. F1 racers crashed in the final sector. Risky still out on a flying lap. Jan Thaler can only manage a 111.0, and he's back in the pits. He will be starting 17th and last on the grid. And now I think it's only Risky left to register a flying lap.
Wow, what exciting stuff here going on. Risky, I'm not sure if he's really pushing at the moment. It doesn't really look like he's carrying so much speed through the final sector. Mercedes, though, driver's going to cross the line, does not improve on that lap, and that looks like that is curtains. An absolutely fantastic lap by Norbert Jakob to reclaim pole at the very last second. But then Patrick just coming up out of nowhere, basically one-shot qualifying it at the very end of the session and putting himself in 3rd. Phenomenal job by the AlphaTauri driver, and what an exciting end to qualifying.
Absolutely. That had just about everything. We had Tom 97 sitting in the garage, biting his fingernails, nervous as you like. And he was right to be nervous because Norbert Jakob took that pole position away from him. He still retains a spot on the front row. And there's a fair run down towards turn 1 here. You can look to try and overtake the pole sitter into that first corner and on the opening lap. Patrick is going to be delighted with that, though. It looked like Maestro Hoffi was going to be the star of this qualifying session in terms of maybe unexpected performance. But Patrick putting himself up in the 3rd. Fantastic stuff. Christian Sendel down in 5th. Probably going to be a touch disappointed with that one, as he is one of only 4 race winners thus far in the season, but the race is still to come, of course, so he can still find a lot more within himself. And you got Deds in 6th, Scars 7th, then the 2 Mercedes, F1 Racer and Risky in 8th and 9th, and Fernandez just about rounding out the top 10. He did 2 laps on that set of tyres that he's going to have to start the race on, so watch out for him to fade a little bit faster than some of the other drivers once we get into the race itself.
Yeah, it should be very exciting stuff. Korsak was also on a relatively quick lap that he invalidated towards the end, but you can look at it. There's like almost a half of a second gap between 12th and 13th, so he wouldn't really have improved. And it looks like the guys like Kev Genetics and Tisu starting 11th and 12th, they might be in a very good position to jump a lot of places with the rain impending. But once again, Norbert Jakob on pole, Tom 92nd starting alongside of him, Patrick starting in 3rd. Exciting qualifying session, and very soon we will have the race for you here. Tier 1 action in Apex Online Racing.
Indeed, and qualifying has certainly delivered. All of the medium tire runners failed to make it into the top 10. In fact, they populated the bottom 5 slots in the timing tower when we got to the end of that session. So they are going to have to rely on making it work on strategy. They're going to rely on effectively getting the 0 stop with the rain coming in to save them. We don't know. You said that the rain seemed like it was coming in right at the end of the race, so medium tires might even struggle to make that. They will have to start on hards, really, to have a realistic effort at that. And even then, it's going to be pretty touch and go, you'd have to imagine.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the skies right now, it is clear as day, not a cloud in sight. So what I was told was that possible rain at the end of the race. So what I'm assuming is that means that the 45-minute weather slot was probably light rain, and that could either mean rain coming just after 20 minutes or rain all the way out the 45-minute mark. Based off of how the sky's looking, we might see a full dry race, maybe with a dash of sprinkles on like the last 2 laps. But even if when the rain starts to come down, it takes a good 5-10 minutes around this track for it actually to be wet enough to put on the intermediate tires. So the guys who may have, likes of Jan Fehler, who did not have the best of qualifying and are starting towards the back and might be thinking, oh, I'll go long until the rain. And it might not actually work out for them, seeing how the weather most likely is going to play out. But we'll see. 35 laps is a very long race. I mean, all around about averaging 1 minute 10. So exciting stuff. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot still to play out in this race, and we've seen already a taste of the battle that we're probably going to see all race long between Norbert Jakob and Tom 97. They were tooth and nail, inches between them in that qualifying session. And then we got the stories of the underdogs just in behind. You got Patrick there and Maestro Hoffi, two drivers who between them haven't managed a podium thus far this season, but they were fighting it out for third slot on the grid, and they're going to be feeling very, very happy with the way that qualifying has gone. Patrick, in particular, of course, getting it right towards the end. His best finish so far this season, that's a pair of fourth-place finishes that he has managed, so he'll be hoping to go at least one better here today.
Yeah, he almost stole a podium last time out in Mexico and then had a rough final few laps, got an unfortunate penalty. So he's definitely looking to be on that podium and possibly, well, hopefully on the top step, but I think it is going to be a two-horse battle up at the front unless weather comes into play with Norbert Jakob and Tom going to be very strong. Now, what I'm curious to see is what Christian Sendel does from P5. We know he's got a lot of pace. He is, like you said, a race winner. However, he's got two underdogs right in front of him that he might find might think they're like a moving chicane, so he's going to have to work his way around them and clear them as quickly as possible if he wants to have a shot at Norbert and Tom up front. So that'll be the driver I'm probably going to watch the most.
I don't know if this is only on my screen right now, but Deads, who qualified in 6th, is being shown as down in 17th on the grid for me. So that is, if true, a very, very bad streak of luck, a bug that must have affected the Williams driver. I can only assume there because didn't get disqualified from qualifying or anything like that I could tell, and yet down there in 17th position, if that is correct.
So I believe it is correct, and that is due to the game having a bug where every once in a while, if you join a mid-qualifying session, no matter how well or how bad you do, it drops you down to last. Now, it doesn't always happen, because of course, look at Korsak. He joined late. He's still in 13th. It's an inconsistent bug that is unfortunately in the game. We just got migrating host. Jan Fehler's internet might have just cut out, so that is not good at all for the German driver. Hopefully, we have a lot of people just crash. What is going on here?
We might be having a lobby restart for Deads, potentially here. Deads was starting up in 6th, so it is a fair penalty that the Brazilian driver has had to face at no fault of his own here. So I wonder if that's what we're getting here. Maybe we're getting a lobby restart.
We are getting a lobby restart because of the glitch that Deads had. So it'll be the third restart of the session. So unfortunate that it's taking so long, but I do think that is probably the right move, as it is just not fair for Deads. We're going to go ahead and back out of this lobby for the meantime, since there's no point in staying here. But yeah, so at least Deads will be able to come back. Now, those guys on the softs do get fresher tires, but what's going to be interesting now is that I know Jan usually likes to go with the dynamic weather, keeping it on. Question is, does he keep it on, or did he try to emulate the rain late in the race? That'll be what's up in the air. But I do think that in this case, it's not like drivers purposely compromise their session to not start in the top 10 or to go on the alternate strategy. I just think the guys who did not have the best of luck, like Korsak and Jan, I just think they just invalidated their laps.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that maybe some of those guys that went out there on mediums towards the end of the session were probably thinking about the rain, maybe in the back of their minds when they were doing that. So it is hard to sort of separate out what everyone was doing in qualifying compared to the weather and knowing whether they would have done the same thing or not, because they'll always say, because they had pretty disappointing qualifyings, they'll always say, oh yeah, I sacked in my qualifying so that I could get I could start on hard tires to make sure that I'd be effectively able to just go straight from hards to inters once the rain came. But you don't necessarily know if that's always going to be the case. Jan himself is due to start 17th and last on the grid, And if there's one thing he needs, it's a bit of rain. So we'll see what direction we're going to go in then with the lobby itself. Yeah, I think it makes sense to restart. Obviously, it's a shame because we had a few restarts already today, but with the issue that Dead's had, I think it makes perfect sense to restart. His race was going to be effectively ruined through no fault of his own. It's also going to help. This lobby restart is going to help everyone in starting on soft tires inside the top 10 because they will have fresh tires to start the race on. They won't have to use the same tires, worn tires that they did qualifying as well on. And that's particularly going to help Fernandez, who had to do a couple of flying laps on that set of soft tires in towards the end of qualifying. He was due to start 10th and on slightly more worn tires than everyone else. Now his tires will be the same as everyone else. So that's good news, at least for him.
Yes, that is good news for drivers who now everyone will get a nice fresh set of soft tires. Now the bad news is that Max AMG will not be able to rejoin as he just has a time commitment, so he's unfortunately not able to wait any longer. And that is something that Jan made clear beforehand, just say let me know, and I do apologize. So unfortunately we will be back down to 16, and the weather will be set to dynamic as we cannot accurately produce the weather and accurately reproduce the weather 100% because we didn't know exactly when the rain would come. So it's not fair to put some drivers at a disadvantage by basically guaranteeing rain at the end. Which, again, like I said, I think, or like we've been saying, I think it's the right call because, like we were talking about before, the rain that could have come might not have been heavy enough to begin with to warrant wet tires. So it makes sense not to really screw some people over per se. So we'll see what kind of weather we get.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always nice to roll the dice once more, right? You know, there's always the sort of, it's almost like a loot box mechanic, right, with the weather in this game. You know, sometimes you don't know what you're going to get. Every time you open up a new lobby, a new race session, you don't know what weather you're going to get. And, you know, maybe you'll get the wet race, maybe you'll get the dry race, maybe you get something in between. I'm still hoping for something in between, for sure. But we'll see. I mean, you know, if the rain now, if we re-roll into a race that has an earlier rain threshold, shall we say, than that previous lobby, then that's only going to help those who compromise their qualifying more. Because if the rain is going to come midway through the race, they can afford to start on medium tires and then make it to pretty comfortably to the point where the rain will start to fall. And still the soft tire runners probably wouldn't be able to make it if it was to say exactly halfway through the race.
Yes, you're absolutely right, and I agree with you on that stuff. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see how it goes. I'm just going to go ahead and confirm one thing. We're getting everyone back in the lobby now. And once everyone, we actually have, wow, we already have everyone in the lobby. So now it's just a matter for Jan to go ahead and organize everyone up properly, and then we'll be back. But all top 10 are supposed to stick to their qualifying tires, as it's how it's supposed to go, and then we'll be back underway. So just stay tuned with us, folks. We do apologize for the delay. I'm going to go to the chat real fast, look at a few things. And yes, we do wish that there was VR support. I think that would be a lot of fun. I mean, I don't have a VR headset. I don't know if you do. But I would love to play or drive an F1 car in VR, that's for sure. What about you?
I mean, I can definitely understand the appeal of that. I myself get incredibly travel sick, so I think it would be a disaster for me. But I can see how it would be fun if that aspect were removed, yeah.
Yep, so, and we do appreciate the nice words in the chat. And yes, the next season will be on the new game, F1 2021. The next season will probably start at around the start of August. Signups will be opened as soon as possible after the release of the game, since there's still a few things that need to be sorted out. Like, no one really knows how much some of the damage model, or some parts of the damage model, are going to affect the performance of the car. So, like, if you have, like, side pod damage, how much will that affect you? It's not like, you know, breaking off part of your wing and, okay, you're just going to, you know how that's going to feel. Like, if you just have side pod damage, no, I don't think anyone really knows it because we don't have a final game, and even people with the beta, it's still up in the air. So there's a few things to sort out, but the goal is to have the season out and at least signups open in July towards the end of it, hopefully the very least. But just keep an eye on the Twitter, the forum, and anywhere else, the YouTube channel for sure. We'll see if we can get stuff up here as well on when signups go up. And yeah, and stay tuned because we're always looking to add people to the grid. And we always I know I'll be back next season. Hopefully Jacob will be able to be alongside me. If not, all good. We'll have plenty of action for you guys in the coming months, that's for sure.
Yeah, it looks like the drivers are now beginning to ready up a little bit here. Maybe I jumped the gun on that. A few drivers have readied up, but it doesn't seem like Jan Fehler has, and I think that's the most important one here. Yeah, no, I'm very much looking forward to league racing on F1 2021. I think it's going to be really, really interesting. I think, obviously, the physics do seem like there's a fair bit of difference. Setups seem to be quite different. So we're probably going to see, at the beginning of the game, a sort of period of understanding and learning and understanding the setups, because that obviously happens from game to game. Anyway, the fastest setups for F1 2020, some of them are still secret. Some of, the Jarno Opmeer setups, etc., they're not public knowledge. And so, there's always room to refine and improve on that front. And if the setups are being changed significantly in the way the game gets more sort of established, because then you can look up a guide and just use an established sort of setup. But it's always nice if drivers can find a little bit of an edge by putting in the practice and developing their own setups.
Sure. Yes, I do agree. And I think it's safe to say, I mean, if you watch Tom97's videos, he was one of the creators who had early access to the beta, and I think he was one of the only guys who actually did a video on how the cars feel, at least in like time trial setup wise. And from what he said, the setups look completely different, and it should definitely change up and spice things up going forward. So definitely looking forward to seeing how the new game makes things unfold, because whenever you get a new game, there's always a few people who come out of nowhere. They just like the handling model, and next thing you know, they're towards the front, and you get new champions, new great drivers, and yeah, a lot to go for. But meanwhile, the lobby has been relaunched, so we're going to go ahead and take us back over into the game as the drivers get back onto the grid, and we'll get to see what kind of weather we have real quick.
Indeed. Speaking of drivers coming out of the blue as well, we have a couple of those in the field here, drivers who really sort of hit their stride on F1 2020. I think that applies to Norbert Jakob, who was a decent driver, I believe, on F1 2019, from what I remember, but really stepped up his game over the course of F1 2020. Christian Sendel came out of nowhere for F1 2020 as well, and he's been very, very impressive as the year has gone on. And even the likes of Tom97, Tom's been around for a while, but he has reached new heights on F1 2020. So, yeah, it's always exciting to see new drivers coming out like that and suddenly reaching this sort of level. And, of course, for every one of those, there's going to be a couple of drivers who maybe the next game doesn't suit them quite so well, and they start to fall away, and that's always sad. But, that always, you need to have the dedication and the drive to get back on it and to try and get back on the horse.
The drivers you just mentioned, I do have to agree. A lot of them did, get their growth spurts with this game. But there's one driver that we commentated on that sticks out to me the most. He's not here today, unfortunately. But it was Patrick Sipos. If you remember, we commentated over him as Sippy back in Australia in the Renault. He was very spin happy, struggling to get his foot underneath the car, get some good pace in F2, and then look at him. One of the top performers in the Challenger Series. And he signed with the team, didn't he?
Yeah, he's now the third driver for the Alpine F1 esports team. It's fantastic stuff. Really, really impressive. He is the absolute sort of archetype. He's the model of what you were describing, the driver who just suddenly comes through on a game, comes out of nowhere. As you mentioned, he started off a little bit iffy. There was a lot of inconsistency of him, but there was always an underlying level of pace that was surprising for someone who was so unestablished as him. But he has established himself really well as the season has gone on, as the young Hungarian, and I've been very, very impressed with him as well. So yeah, he's got big things to come for sure.
Yeah, I remember that first race because I saw all the stuff in time trial. I was like, this guy will be interesting, and then he struggled. And then it wasn't really until Hungary that season, or no, Zandvoort that season, that he really didn't get a good feel for the car. But once he did, he was flying. And speaking of flying, we'll have to see how the drivers are right now. I mean, let's look at tire details. All right, everyone outside the top 10 is on mediums. So I think it's safe to assume we won't have rain at the end. We'll just have a nice dry race. So yeah, clear skies. We're ready to go. This should be very, very fun.
Yeah, and clear skies, better than rain all race, I'd say. Obviously, I still like to have that jeopardy of the rain coming right at the end. It doesn't, as you mentioned, I think we would have seen at least a couple of drivers out there on hards if that was the case. So yeah, we're probably either that or maybe we're going to be seeing rain super quickly into the session. But given how much sunlight I'm seeing on the circuit right now, I think that's quite unlikely.
Yeah, it's definitely very sunny out. No signs of any clouds anywhere, and the game is at least predictable enough. I know storms can roll in quickly, but safe to say we have ourselves a dry race. Something that'll be very exciting. I'm sure we'll have lots of action through the field because we do have drivers displaced everywhere. And like we were talking about before, we got the underdogs towards the front. So curious to see how it will go. Deads is back in 6th position, which is definitely good for the Brazilian. We'll see what he can do from there. Scars behind him in the Haas. So definitely a handful of drivers to watch out for today. Johan, actually, fun fact about him is he was injured, which is why he hasn't raced in a while, and he recently returned from it. He had, I believe, a either elbow injury, I think it was what he told me, because he also does the F2 racing on Saturdays, and he had to sit out for about 5-6 weeks, but it's nice to have him back, and even though he's only in 13th, I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do today.
Yeah, injuries stopping drivers isn't something you hear so much about in sim racing, but yeah, no, absolutely. It's very glad to see him back, and hopefully his elbow is well and recovered at this stage. I'd say watch out for both Korsak and Jan Thaler off the start, and then in the opening few laps, I'd expect them to make some progress. They're both very much out of position. Kev Genetics as well will probably be able to make his way up through the field after a little while once those medium tires come into effect. But now here come the lights then in Canada for the second to final race on AOR in F1 2020. We are underway, and it looks like a very clean start indeed from Norbert Jakob, leading Tom 97 comfortably into the first corner. Then Patrick up the inside of Maestro Hoffy. Hoffy trying to keep his nose in there with Patrick, but Patrick braves it around the outside of turn 2 and will maintain his grip on 3rd position. Christian Sendel still there in 5th as well. Not a whole lot of shifting and changing going on right now, apart from both Fernandez and F1 Racer, who have dropped out of the top 10 on their soft tires. F1 Racer losing 4 positions, off the start there. Not good news for him. Risky, Kev Genetics, and Tisu have all had good starts.
F1 Racer, I think, was either... Now, his teammate was very hot on the brakes in the turn 1, but F1 Racer was all the way on the outside, and as a result, he was in the grass for turn 2 and just struggled to find a spot on track to rejoin, and it cost him a lot of position. So we'll see what the Mercedes driver can do. Ooh, what kind of contact did you just see?
Yeah, a bit of contact between Fernandez and Kev Genetics there. Fernandez sent a dive bomb at the inside of Tisu into the hairpin, and then Kev Genetics was sort of on the apex of the corner, and Fernandez couldn't get it slowed down in time. Made a little bit of contact. Now we're looking like we're going 3 wide down the back straight. This is very, very brave from Tisu. Kev Genetics holds it around the outside. That's incredible. And somehow Tisu comes out bottom of those 3. Here comes F1 Racer trying to make up for that relatively poor start. This is carnage right now. Jan Thaler's all the way up the inside. He sensibly backs out of that move. But this is some kind of racing here at the end of lap 1 in the bottom end of the field. Jan is still going side by side with Johan. Tisu still there. But F1 Racer just made up about 3 positions on the main straight. That's incredible.
3 wide into the final chicane. There goes Jan trying to go up the inside of Johan, but nothing working for him there. 3 wide everywhere, everything kicking off at the back of the grid. But all that action has made Kev Genetics lose DRS by a margin on Scars, so he's going to have to really push to get back into it if he wants to make starting on the medium tires work. Meanwhile, up front, Norbert Jakob still holding station up in 1st, Tom in 2nd, Patrick and Maestro Hoffy. Actually, the whole top 6 are all as is, with Risky up to 7th, Scars down to 8th. It's all in the back so far where all the overtaking is getting done.
Yeah, that's where all the action is right now. And thinking of this trainer car, Deads messes up in the final corner. This is going to give Risky an opportunity down as they cross the finish line. Risky has the inside line for turn 1, and this should be a move easy as you like from the Mercedes driver, getting past the Brazilian. Deads tries to find some kind of switch back on the exit of 2, but not ever going to be possible. You have no traction on the right-hand side on the exit of that corner. And as a result, Risky mates up yet another position. He's up 3 now from the 9th position he started this race in. I think he would have been a touch disappointed with this qualifying, but the race is going swimmingly so far for him.
Yes, he's definitely moving his way up the order. He's now all over the rear diffuser of Christian Sendel. He's definitely looking like the fastest driver on track right now. Timing board might say otherwise, but going up 3 positions and running down the German and the Alfa Romeo up ahead. Goes a little deep into the hairpin. Let's see if he can get any kind of run. Nothing doing. I believe DRS is available this lap, or no, is this only lap 2? I might have missed it. No, DRS is available wide open, but when you're in that DRS train, you're not really going to have any easy overtakes. That is for sure. Ooh. Risky locks up for the final chicane, has to bail out of it, and loses a little bit of time to Christian up ahead as Tisu picks up the first 3-second time penalty of the race.
Yeah, that's the second time I've seen Risky failing to make a corner. The first one, I think, was on the opening lap into turn 7. He had to cut that chicane as well. Went around the bollard, did everything right, as he did in that final corner there, I believe. But yeah, Risky, you know, maybe it's in the name. Maybe taking a few too many risks in the braking zones right now, missing a couple of them, and just flying a little bit off. I think, from what I understand, I believe Risky is relatively new to driving without racing line. I believe this is one of Risky's first league races without racing line. And yeah, you can see again, misses the apex, has to skip across turn 7 there. And yeah, that's the sort of thing that's kind of indicative of someone who hasn't been used to driving without the racing line quite so much. Because the racing line, of course, gives you a nice adaptive braking zone. It tells you lap by lap, roughly where you need to brake. Sometimes it's not fully correct, but usually it's overly cautious rather than the other way around. So it gives you, it sort of babies you through the braking zone, shall we say. Now Risky driving without that racing line, clearly struggling in a few of those braking zones to make the point. And now Christian Sendel has a moment with the Wall of Champions, and Risky will be able to get that position regardless. So while Risky is struggling in terms of being in the runoff area more often than not, he's also managing to make up position after position in this race.
Yeah, I mean, what it's been confirmed in the chat is this is his first race ever without the racing line, and he's doing a fantastic job at that, up 4 positions, up into 5th, just running down driver after driver, capitalizing off of mistakes. Yeah, it's a little unrefined at the moment, but I don't think it matters because he's still within DRS range. He hasn't lost positions due to any mistakes, so he's doing a fantastic job right now. Meanwhile, Kev Genetics has got DRS on Scars, so he's able to close that gap up, but Scars lost it to Deads up ahead. So Scars going to have to really start pushing now, otherwise he's going to get disconnected from the top 7. So something to look for towards the back is F1 Racer and Fernandez are the 2 soft runners who are not in that front pack anymore.
Christian Sendel is in trouble here. I wonder if he picked up front wing damage when he made contact with the Wall of Champions. It doesn't look like it, but there's always a possibility that you've got sort of green damage on that front wing, which will be hindering him just a little bit because he's looking very vulnerable to Deads at the moment here, but he has actually managed to pull away from him in the final chicane. So I think that's all okay then for Christian Sendel. Further behind, Kev Genetics is still there with F1 Racer. Scars dove into the pits at the end of that lap, and he has had a front wing change. Now, I was going to say, it seems to me like Scars is a little bit more off the pace than I would expect, and front wing damage is exactly the sort of thing I was imagining. So Scars onto medium tires with a new front wing on that house.
We'll see what kind of recovery drive he can do. He's obviously lost a few seconds as a result, but he's going for a little bit of an undercut, and the undercut is pretty powerful around this track, so he might be able to make up for some lost time in the coming laps. Meanwhile, up towards the front, Deads all over the back of Christian Sendel. It definitely looks like Christian Sendel's got some kind of issue, whether it be damage or just, you know, yeah, it's like locking up the brake zone. Maybe he's just not comfortable with the track, but either way, Christian not looking as comfortable as he usually is, and he's definitely looking very vulnerable to the Williams behind us. There goes Deads to the left-hand side of the track, and it'll be a very easy DRS overtake. Deads up to 6th, Christian down to 7th.
Yeah, Christian always seemed to let Deads through there, and I wonder if the idea is to be able to DRS, farm ERS off of Deads in the next few DRS zones, and be able to close back in to that DRS train at the front that is currently led by Norbert Jakob, who is in the lead of this race from Tom97 in second, and Patrick is staying absolutely there with them. Same for Maestro Hoffi. Both of those guys, it wasn't a fluke in qualifying. They are both right there with the Hungarian and the Brit out at the very front of the race, and very, very impressive stuff from them. They continue to impress as this race is going on. And I did see Christian Sendel mentioning on Twitter that maybe he was going to be about half a second off of where he would like to be here in Canada. He didn't seem like he was that far away in qualifying, but in the race itself, it does seem like he's struggling a little bit more than I would expect.
Yeah, I did see that tweet as well, so that does make sense. Meanwhile, while you were going through and talking about how Patrick and Maestro Hoffi were keeping up, Risky sent up a very risky dive bomb up the inside at the end of Sector 1. Didn't make it work. It got a little squirmy, but he had to try again. It was all clean as you'd like. He just wasn't able to get the power down in the right-hander in that chicane at the start of the second sector. But once again, the Mercedes driver on the move, looking very racy, gaining a lot on Mr. Hoffy as Dez dives into the pits, looking to the inside, but backing out of it at this time. But he's definitely putting a lot of pressure on the Ferrari driver up ahead. Dez in the pits, meanwhile, going for onto mediums, no wing change or anything. He's going to come out a decent ways ahead of Scars by the looks of it. So Scars' pit stop and having to change his wings really cost the Haas driver a decent amount of time. But maybe he can get like a VSC or something to pull him back in, but we'll have to wait and see what goes on. Lap 8 out of 35. We're only a fifth of the way through the race, and 2 drivers have pitted. A lot of action brewing.
Yeah, and the fact that Deb's just pitted, by the way, could well cause some sort of chain reaction with the front few drivers here, because he was closing in. He was about 1.2 seconds behind Risky at the back of this DRS train when he came into the pits. And hold on, there seems to be an issue at the moment for Patrick. I'm seeing a big red X next to his name, and he's uncharacteristically slow. Maestro Hoffy shutting the door on Risky there, who had to completely back out of it down the main straight. Scars picks up a 3-second time penalty, and Maestro Hoffy diving into the pit lane. But Patrick is really slow right now, and it wouldn't surprise me if he's not actually in control of that car. Norbert Jakob has also pitted from the race lead. Christian Sendel and Fernandez into the pits as well. And it seems to me like there's some desynchronization issues with Patrick at the moment.
Yeah, I quickly sent Patrick a invite just in case there was some issue. But yeah, it looks like it was a little bit of desync, as there he is back up with Tom. He looked like he was in front of Risky. Risky a little farther back in reality. Probably caught the Mercedes driver a little bit off guard, seeing the car teleport up the road, but he has shown a lot of pace to move up towards the grid. Meanwhile, out of the drivers who have pitted, Mr. Hoffy is actually ahead of Norbert Jakob. We did not see that, but it looks like Norbert Jakob got held in the pits. Maybe, by the looks of it, maybe Fernandez, because Fernandez came in that lap with him being the Williams, and as a result, the Ferrari team got Mr. Hoffy out ahead of Norbert Jakob. So this will definitely shake things up, as Tom now has a chance to overcut his rival. So we'll have to wait and see. Either that or Mr. Hoffy could inherit the net race lead.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big change there. And yeah, I'm very surprised to see that having happened. Christian Sendel has also pitted, and he is well behind Dead. So yeah, still struggling in this race is the German. Now F1 Racer into the pits. Risky into the pits as well. So that's both Mercedes pitting on the same lap. That's not going to be good news for F1 Racer, who's had to wait a little bit there in the pit box. Patrick also came into the pit lane. Let's see where those guys come out now relative to the likes of Norbert Jakob, who has found himself back ahead now of Maestro Hoffy. Sorry, I completely missed that there. But there's Patrick going around the outside of both of them through turn 2 on the pit lane exit. Patrick now might have the de facto race lead. It's going to be between him and Tom 97, but Norbert Jakob is still possibly the fastest car out there. So Patrick's going to have a big task on his hands, trying to keep the Hungarian at bay.
Yeah, with how close these cars are, Tom 97 really needs to be pushing on this lap to make the overcut work, because if he loses any ground to these cars, you can see Norbert Jakob really looking racy behind Patrick. But if he loses any little bit of time on this in-lap, he's going to get stuck behind all 4 cars. So he needs to be very careful. As there goes Norbert Jakob up the inside into the hairpin, making it stick, makes the apex, and has the position, I believe, done. It does the camera angle not doing him justice. But it looks like the DRS detection zone, I believe, is before. Yes, it's before the hairpin. So Norbert Jakob does get DRS down the straight. And that's leaving Patrick a little vulnerable. Mr. Hoffy going to the right, going back to the left, and just staying behind Patrick. But right now, Tom 97 in the pits. Now, one thing to note as well, with how late he was able to pit, so he might be going for a soft, medium, soft strategy. Because if you recall, with us restarting the lobby, he's got a fresh set of softs. So a lot more strategy stuff changing, as there they are, 3 wide.
Look at him going outside the pits. They almost made contact with him there because Patrick and Maestro Hoffy were side by side. There was hardly enough room for Tom to leave the pit lane, but he manages to find his way back out onto the circuit in what will become second position once the pit stop shake out. Meanwhile, behind him, Maestro Hoffy still going side by side with Patrick into turn 6, now through 7. Patrick has the right racing line, and Maestro Hoffy has to sit in behind, but not for long, because on the run down towards turn 7 as they go onto the bridge, he might send a dive bomb. No, the braking zone not long enough. And Maestro Hoffy will sensibly back away from that one. One big difference between Tom and Norbert Jakob right now is the fact that Tom has 95% battery charge, whereas Norbert Jakob, because he had to battle with all those cars on the pit lane exit, he's down at 40%. So Tom has a big opportunity to really put Norbert under pressure in the next few laps.
Yes, he is. And also, Jan Fehler and Korsak both into the pits at the end of lap 11 off the mediums. Definitely very early pit stops for the drivers. Jan actually having to replace his wing. Is Korsak as well, perhaps? Did they come together?
No, Korsak seems A-okay here, but he's gone out on a set of soft tires. Scars into the pit, I'm assuming with more front wing damage, and he has decided to retire from the race. So sadly, we will not see the South African at the end of this one. Christian Sendel is off in turn 1. I don't know what's happened to him, but he's lost it somehow in turn 1. And Christian Sendel down now into 14th place. What a disaster of a race for him.
Yeah, the two German drivers who are also race winners in Christian Sendel and Jan Fehler both having just disastrous days, down 14th and 15th. We didn't get to see what happened to Jan. Might be able to check the race director to see if there was any contact with them, but losing part of his wing and having to do the wing change just completely ruined his strategy after starting on the mediums. Meanwhile, Deads has just gotten around Risky. The two of them have been battling back and forth behind Maester Hoffy and Patrick, who've also lost DRS by a margin to Tom. So Norbert and Tom starting to pull away.
Tom now might send it up the inside. No, he could have gone. He could have gone for the move on Norbert Jakob, and he didn't. He just closed the DRS and decided that he would wait a little bit longer. And he's just putting the Hungarian under so much pressure right now. Norbert Jakob will be seeing those proximity arrows blinking between white and red as Tom is getting closer and closer to that rear wing down the straights. And as a result, Norbert's not going to be able to rest on his laurels. He's not going to be able to farm up as much ERS as he would like. He's going to have to be deploying much more than he would want to be right now. And Tom is still not really deploying anything. I think for Tom now, he has to start deploying his ERS a bit more to put Norbert under pressure. Otherwise, he's going to allow Norbert just to regain enough energy to bring him back on level with Tom once again. So it's interesting to me that Tom decided not to overtake him on that previous lap.
Yes, I do agree. It's definitely an interesting strategy call. Meanwhile, a lot of the guys who started on the medium tires who have pitted are a little bit of ways away from that front soft pack that was basically is currently caboosed by Risky. You can see Fernandez is 4 seconds adrift, and then Korsak another 2. So there goes Tom, though. He's using his battery, and he's going to have the move stick before the braking zone for the final chicane. Tom up into the net race lead around Norbert, but this is going to allow Norbert to recharge his battery. So while Tom might try to run away, Norbert's going to have a chance to recharge with the 3 DRS straights.
Well, so Tom still has about 40% extra left in the bank compared to Norbert Jakob, as Korsak in the second of the racing points, that's the fastest lap of the race on those fresh soft tires. But Tom, I think what Tom needs to do now is just to gun it on overtake and try and break DRS to Norbert Jakob, because he still has that 40% to eat into. If he uses that 40%, it's going to bring him level to Norbert Jakob at worst. And if he's ahead of him by more than a second, Norbert won't have an easy time regenning his own ERS. So I think Tom should try and break that DRS mark right now. He doesn't seem to be doing it, though. He's still being pretty tentative with that overtake button.
Yes, very interesting stuff. He might not know that Norbert has a very low battery concern. He might be expecting him to be on level playing field, but we'll have to wait and see what Tom does. I'm sure he's going to have someone in his chat telling him that, hey, you got a lot more battery. So we'll see if he goes ahead and pushes. Meanwhile, in the background, look at Patrick taking a defensive line from Maester Hoffy. Maester's not close enough. Tom gets a time penalty, though. That's not something you normally see from the British driver.
Yeah, that's really, really rare, actually, to see Tom 97 picking up a time penalty. He's usually squeaky clean pretty much throughout any given race. I did hear him mentioning on his stream about an hour ago, he was talking about this race and saying that he knew that time penalties, they were going to be a pretty big factor in the race. I don't think he imagined that he would be the one in the disadvantaged situation, though, because he's usually so good at avoiding those time penalties. But right now, it is Norbert Jakob in third and Patrick in fourth who have that particular advantage. Maestro Hoffy also still without any penalties of that front 4 cars. And then Deads and Risky have both managed to pick up some penalties. Risky up to 9 seconds worth of time penalties. And again, that's something that driving without racing line is going to give you.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's definitely a learning curve, you know, because you got to make your braking points breaking points, and if you go off and you get the warnings, they do accumulate. Not as badly as Mexico, but it is still bad. Kev Genetics disconnecting from the race lead. Yeah, very interesting. Let's go ahead and make sure he's got a backup invite to get him back in here. I know he was having connection issues before, but I'm sure that is not what he wanted to have happen. And the fact that he was going long on those mediums, probably going to go for a double soft stint, but his AI has at least left him out on track, so he's going to still have the strategy that he wants. But hopefully he gets in as soon as possible and doesn't have what happened to Jan Failer last time out, because that would not be good at all, and that's never good to see.
No, absolutely not. And now, of course, losing that race lead to Tom97, who's able to drive through the ghosted car. Same for Norbert Jakab. This is a sad stage of the race then for Kev Genetics. Korsak picks up a 3-second time penalty. He's running an 8th at the moment. With those soft tires, he's comfortably the fastest car out on track. Maybe Tisu also going to be pretty rapid, as he's also got strapped on a fresh set of soft tires. Maestro Hoffi, meanwhile, has been able to get past Patrick on that last lap into the final chicane. Deads picks up yet another 3-second time penalty. He is also up to 9 seconds now. So the fight between him and Risky is at least a level playing field, even if they're not on a level playing field with the rest of the F1 field, so to speak.
Yes, a lot of drivers with time penalties already, and the guys who are keeping it clean, the likes of Johan and F1 Racer down the order, are definitely going to pick off a few places come the checkered flag. And there goes Maestro Hoffi. You know, it seems like the commentator's curse is not is in full force today.
Yeah.
His driver's picking up time penalties. Kev Genetics AI, though, interesting, still out on track. I wonder if he might have set up for a medium-hard strategy. And his AI is just keeping it out longer for the set of hards. But of course, with him being disconnected, he's losing a lot of time since the AI is only set to 90%, and it is just not fast enough when you are here in Tier 1.
Yeah. And at this stage, I think this is pretty much curtains for Kev Genetics' race, barring some kind of late safety car. Even if he gets back into the session right now, he has lost a bucket load of time already. And yeah, he's not going to be anything like in contention for the sort of positions he once was going to be. He's one of only 3 cars in the field that are yet to pick up a time penalty. Johan in 10th is doing a good job on that front, so he stands to gain several positions once we get to the checkered flag. And he is on fresher medium tyres than Fernandez ahead, so he might be looking to close in on the Williams and try and move himself up a couple of positions on circuit as well. And then, of course, you have Norbert Jakab there in second, still very, very close behind Tom97. He also doesn't have any time penalties. Risky is getting past Deads then into the final chicane. And these positions have swapped many times this race, and I feel like that's not the last we've seen of the battle between these two.
Yes, the two of them have been battling all race. Risky also probably going to look to try to get around Patrick, who's kind of slowed up a little bit with him being on some older medium tire. Not the oldest in the group, since Deads came in the earliest of them all, but Patrick's pace has dropped off these past few laps. You can see he's now 3.3 from Maestro to Norbert up ahead. So the whole group as a whole has dropped off of pace a little bit. But interestingly enough, they've been quick enough that Korsak hasn't really been able to run them down on those fresh softs. So that is one thing to note. And on top of all that, Johan, who's on those fresh mediums, started on mediums. So he's going to have to put on either the softs or the hards. And I'll bet he's going to go with the softs at the end of the race, and he's going to be electric. So not only is he penalty-free, but he'll be very, very racy at the very end of the race. So let's keep an eye on him as well in the Haas.
I'm very surprised to see the fact that Korsak really isn't eating into that gap between himself and Deads very quickly at the moment. Still over 3 seconds, and it has been for a little while now. So, yeah, evidently those soft tyres not really lasting as long as he would be hoping for this stint of the race. Not bringing him anything like what he would like. You know, the first few laps were really rapid as Johan now gets past Fernandez. That is 8th and 9th positions. We called it about a lap ago, and now Johan does make the move. So the Frenchman is up into 8th. He has Korsak, Deads, Risky, Patrick, Maestro Hoffi all up ahead, all with penalties. And at the moment, he stands to gain from at least Korsak, Deads, and Risky, as Deads moves up now to 12 seconds worth of time penalties.
Yeah, the Brazilian driver really giving it his all. But a little bit of a cost. Tisu picking up a time penalty as well on those fresh softs. This driver's really doing high risk, high reward right now around the street circuit of Montreal. I would definitely consider this a street circuit, wouldn't you?
Yeah, no, I think technically speaking it is a street circuit, and it does feel like a street circuit in some parts as well. You know, the closeness of the walls around the majority of the track definitely gives it that street circuit vibe. You know, you cannot afford to run a little bit too wide through corners like, for instance, turn 4. That's always going to be a really tricky one. Turn 8 as well. You can always pick up front wing damage if you aren't careful through there because of the proximity of the walls. And of course, the legendary Wall of Champions as Norbert Jakob picks up a 3-second time penalty in the final chicane. I was about to say Tom97 almost lost it over the final curbing there, but Norbert Jakob does one worse and picks up a time penalty to move himself back level with Tom97 in terms of overall penalties. And now Johan is the highest placed driver yet to pick up a penalty.
Yes, definitely levels the playing field there. Meanwhile, behind them, Patrick has all of a sudden shown some pace. He was right on the gearbox of Maestro Hoffy, and Risky was right there as well. So there's a little bit of a gap now after the first few corners. But going into turn 1, there was about a half second between the 3 drivers. So it's looking like Maestro Hoffy's all of a sudden, like he must have made a mistake or something, because he had Patrick and Risky all over him. We'll have to keep an eye on it though. But I guess those double DRS straights, he actually might be running more downforce than the other drivers, would probably make the most sense. So let's keep an eye on them. It's Norbert Jakob coming out of the final corner. He's all over the gearbox of Tom97. He's going to use the battery, use the DRS, and make the nice and easy overtake on the British driver. He's going to go to the right-hand side of the track. DRS wide open, and Norbert Jakob is going to have the position going into the braking zone as Kev Genetics rejoins, as Norbert Jakob slides through the final corner, doesn't even touch the wall, and is now taken the race lead once again.
I tell you what, that is cheeky from Norbert Jakob, I'll say, because he did make contact with Tom97 in the chicane, and that unsettled Tom's car in the acceleration zone, or not in the chicane, sorry, in the hairpin, I should say, and that unsettled Tom's car in the acceleration zone on the exit there, and that's a really important traction zone, so that definitely helped Norbert to make that move, and I'm sure Tom won't be too pleased with the way that all went down. Meanwhile, Deads has gone into the pits and retired from the race. Risky has pitted for a second time, so the Mercedes driver will come back out in 13th with fresh medium tyres. You've got to imagine he's going to the end on those.
I think Risky might have had some damage. I think there was some kind of contact because the Risky came out really far, a lot farther behind than what I thought he would have. And if you look at where Deads came out way farther ahead. I mean, yeah, he sped in the pits, but I think there might have been some kind of damage to his car. So he's going to have a lot to make up now in these final 14 laps of the race.
Yep, you are correct. Risky picked up front wing damage, and I wonder if that's got something to do with it. Him and Deads were very, very close on circuit, and Deads has retired from the race in the pit lane. So I wonder if there was a bit of contact between the two of them that Deads wasn't too pleased with. And as a result, he decided he was done with the race. It's only speculation, of course. Can't say for certain. Didn't see it. So don't take that as gospel by any means. Up to the very front right now, as Christian Sendel pits from 9th, we have Norbert Jakob and Tom still very, very close to one another. Maestro Hoffy has got considerably closer to this battling pair than he was a few laps ago.
Speaking of getting closer, Korsak must have made a mistake somewhere. He's got Johan right on his gearbox. Johan looking very quick. He's definitely got the better tire now because those 10-lap-old softs on that racing point are going to be horrible right now. And Johan in the Haas with only the 9-lap-old mediums, who, again, like we said, he's going to put on softs at the end. So some of these drivers up ahead might be waiting to put softs on the end as well. But Johan's guaranteed to be doing that. And with those no penalties that he has, he just needs to be pulled along just a little bit or make the overtake and use what he's got left in his car. So he gets a much better exit than the Chinese driver. He's going to look to make the easy overtake in the DRS zone. He's actually going to go alongside as the DRS gets opened, and this should be a nice and easy overtake for the Frenchman as he goes up into 5th position without any penalties.
Yeah, Korsak really struggling to get any traction then on those very worn rear soft tires, and that is allowing Johan through and into 5th. He is looking very, very good right now. He'll have to close in the gap between himself and Patrick and Maestro Hoffy up ahead because both of them only have 3 seconds of time penalties apiece, I do believe, and currently the gap between Johan and Patrick is 7 seconds. So he's got a way to go before he gets any more positions come the checkered flag, but still a very, very solid position to be in, and now he's just gained about 3/10 on Patrick in the opening sector of this lap. Out at the front, Tom97 is still absolutely imperious when it comes to his ERS percentage. Multiple times I've seen it crest up to 100%, the triple digits in the battery. And Norbert Jakab is still down there. He's about 73% at the moment. So the gap between them isn't necessarily as big as it once was, but Tom himself is maintaining a lot of ERS, and now he's going to have an easy breeze pass down the back straight. Norbert Jakab not bothering to defend it. These guys, they're driving in tandem right now, letting each other through and again. And that's the sort of strategic racing here. They're not going to battle over every position, every lap, because they know that with the DRS, how strong it is here, it's going to be what happens in the last couple of laps that really makes a difference.
You know, speaking of the last couple of laps, I mean, I'm assuming it's going to stay dry, but there's a little bit of a cloud cover now. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that. I'm assuming it's going to stay dry. Of course, that goes on to another fresh set of softs. So you'd have to assume that it's going to stay dry for the rest of the race, but it's definitely looking a little interesting. Weather is definitely going to play a part with the cloud cover. But Tom absolutely blitzing it right now. He's almost a second clear of Norbert Jakab in just a sector alone. The British driver absolutely pedal to the metal right now, trying to run away with the lead and break the DRS.
And I tell you what he's doing, what I said he should have done that last time that he got past Norbert Jakab. He is throwing down that overtake. He's launching the battery out the rear end of that car and hoping that it'll propel him down these main straights right now. Did Norbert Jakab get DRS? Yes, he did. He just got DRS. And that could be an enormous difference maker. However, Norbert Jakab has had to use almost all of his battery charge to maintain that DRS. So he is now down at 20%, Tom at 50%. And so Tom will still have more over and above him on this next lap to push in the middle sector when the DRS won't be available. He should be able to comfortably break that DRS to Norbert Jakab by the next time we get to the detection point. And then it's going to be up to Norbert to try and close back in on him on raw speed alone.
The question is, when do one of these front runners pit? Now, Patrick has 6 seconds of time penalties while everyone else has 3, but you can't really count out Mr. Hoffey just yet. I mean, he's only, one of the drivers up ahead picks up another time penalty. He's even closer to it. But now Tom breaking DRS as Norbert Jakab decide, hey, this is the time to pit, because he might go for that undercut, go onto a fresh set of softs, as you can see a bunch of other drivers have done in the field. We'll have to see what happens going on to the last 10 laps of the race. Will anyone pull the trigger? However, like we saw with Corsac, those tires do fall off after about 6 or 7 laps on the softs. These guys might be trying to stretch out those mediums an extra couple of laps. We'll have to wait and see now. As they come down the long back straight, will he blast right into the pits? No. Tom does not. Does Norbert? Norbert stays out as well. What about Patrick and Maestro? Patrick completely out of battery right now. None of them decide to pit this time around. So the top 4 still out on track. Top 5 all out on track. No one trying to pit for the last time.
And look at the gap now between Tom 97 and Norbert Jakab. 1.9 seconds between our race leader and the car currently in second place. Tom is just suddenly putting on a clinic out there at the very front. He's down to about 40% of his battery, and that's what he was saving it for this whole time. He was playing it very, very cool, and suddenly he's just gunned it, and this is the potential that he was holding back that whole time. Norbert Jakab just cannot live with it right now, and he's falling down to 2.3 seconds, give or take, from Tom 97. I think Norbert should have pitted on that last lap and put Tom under pressure, because now he's just falling further and further away. Now I think he's outside of undercut range, which could be critical.
Yes, I believe that is exactly what has happened. On top of that, Norbert's on 2-lap older mediums, so they've definitely fallen off the clip, and Tom jumped at the perfect time, as now he's got 2 laps fresher mediums. I mean, even 15-lap old mediums are bad compared to 17. I mean, they're going to be a lot better, but these guys still staying out. Not sure when they're going to try to pit. Maybe they know something we don't, but I'm definitely surprised that the front 4 have not pitted for the final time just yet, really pushing it on these mediums that have to be absolutely gone at this point.
And adding to that as well, Corsac and Fernandez have both gone on to fresh soft tyres that they think will make it to the end. Ah, I see what they're waiting for. A raindrop has just appeared on my camera. I was on board with Corsac, who's just been able to get past Christian Sendel there into turn 11, and one solitary raindrop just fell onto the camera. They're starting to fall now as F1 Racer and Tisu. They're battling into the first corner as well, and that is what these guys are staying out there on track for. how long can the medium tires last around here? Because Norbert Jakab might be getting pretty marginal for puncture territory by the time we get onto intermediate tires in this race. You can see how much time he's losing as a result of those tires being too worn out. He's down to 3.2 seconds now behind Tom 97. Tom with those 2 laps of extra freshness making a huge difference. As now Corsac is right there with F1 Racer in 10th and 11th. Corsac trying to hung it around the outside of 8. That's an impressive move to try. Unfortunately for Corsac, it didn't come off this time around, but now that he has pitted for a second time, he needs to get everything he can out of these soft tires before we go back onto inters.
Yeah, the craziest thing right now, you know, the drivers are probably in the best situation, you would argue, are Jan Fehler and Bible. The top 4 all on the oldest set of medium tires on the grid. Johan is on 15-lap-old mediums, so much better shape, but he's only driven on mediums all race, so he hasn't done a required compound. So unless he gets wet enough for inters, he has to come in and pit one more time. So he's just praying that the rain comes down harder, while the likes of Jan Fehler and Bible might be like, hey, just keep it dry, keep it raining just enough where the tires get worn out. But that they might be able to make it to the end, honestly, just barely. But the front 4, on the other hand, are going to definitely be in puncture territory soon.
Tisu has been the first driver then to go on to intermediate tires. He's our guinea pig. We'll track his progress. I can't imagine it's time for inters just yet, but he was on a very, very old set of soft tires. So, yeah, it makes sense that he wanted to get rid of those as quick as possible. Trouble is, he's going to have to take about a lap of pain at least on those inters before it really gets to the conditions where they are called for. But look at the gap between Tom and Norbert. It just keeps getting bigger. And it's not only the gap between Tom and Norbert, the gap between Tom and the entirety of the rest of the field is ballooning out of control right now. This is a masterclass from Tom Martinez at the front of this race. He is performing fantastically under very, very pressurized situation. The battle between himself and Norbert was raging on for the whole race. We could have seen him lose his head. We could have seen him try and push it earlier. He held it to the perfect moment and was able now to build the gap he needs to Norbert Jakab. Even if Norbert gets in for inters on the perfect lap and Tom has to wait for an extra lap, 4.2 seconds is going to be a lot to overcome.
Yes, let's hope for Tom's sake that he's not using too much of his tires in the process. I'm sure they're definitely not going to be as comfortable as you'd like, because usually if you do a 2-stop strategy, you're going to pit after 14 laps on the mediums, and at that point they feel bad. So I can only imagine what kind of pain some of these guys are going through on 20-lap-old mediums. You can see him, he locks up into the hairpin. He's got to be careful. Keeps locking up like that. He's going to get some extra wear on the tires that he does not want. But that could make things interesting, because you got the likes of Corsac and Fernandez on fresher softs. They can make it to the end, but if it stays dry enough, they might be able to inherit due to punctures. We'll wait and see, but no one else biting to pit just yet.
Yeah, I'm looking on board with Tisu at the moment, and he is just hopelessly slow on these inters right now. The track is just not ready for them. We're on lap 30 of 35, and if anything, Tisu is looking more likely to get lapped by Tom 97 on his 19-lap-old mediums than he is to start driving away from him with these fresh intermediates that Tisu has on his car. It's just not working out for them at the moment, as Fernandez has been able to get past F1 Racer for P11. F1 Racer dropping like a stone at this phase of the race with his incredibly elderly tires as well. Christian Sendel and Corsac are battling, and that's Christian getting back past Corsac. The Corsac trying to get it on the exit of turn 2, cannot manage to get alongside, so Christian Sendel will hold on to the position on track. At least penalties definitely going to be being a factor between those 2 drivers, as well as they will for pretty much the entirety of the field. But yeah, Jan Fehler and Johan, they have to be hoping. Well, the thing is, Jan Fehler started on medium tires as well. He's only been on medium tires in this race. Johan, I'm not sure. I think he also started on mediums.
Yes.
So I believe they both do have to pit again, either for a soft set of tires or for an intermediate set of tires. I think there's no other way about it right now. Tisu leading the session in the pit lane. I think he's done with those inters not working in time for him. And the rain is coming down heavier, but it's still no spray out.
Yes. Also, Baiblue in the same situation as Jan and Johan. All 3 of them have gone medium to medium. So even though I said they were in the best position, it turns out I lied. And those drivers are in pretty bad positions. But Risky actually in 7th. You know, he pitted pretty early onto that last set of mediums. We thought, you know, he's kind of out of it. But, you know, if it stays dry enough like this, he knows 3 cars ahead of, well, 2 now. He cleared Baiblue. They have to pit for the mandatory pit stop. And 22-lap-old mediums could get you a puncture on Maestro Hoffy, but there goes Risky going up the inside of Norbert Jacob. We have a spinner. That's Maestro Hoffy. He is completely round. His tires look okay, but he had a spin coming out of the third chicane, and the Ferrari's day has just gone absolutely downhill. He's looking on track to get a podium, and now he's sitting in P8 on 22 lap old mediums. It's heartbreak for the Tifosi.
Yeah, that is a bit of a disaster then for him. No punctures or anything like that on the car. Those tires would have become very, very untenable. And that's why we've seen him spinning out there, along with the slippery conditions that the rain is bringing to this track. And that's the thing, is these sorts of situations where the track is wet, but not that wet. That is so hard to drive on when you're on slick tires. Someone is into the pits. That's Tisu's AI car. So I won't have to worry about that. And I think that's going to tell us right now that the AI thinks that dry tires are the tires to be on, because evidently it doesn't want to be on those inters. It straps on a set of fresh mediums instead. And the AI tends to know best in this sort of situation. Maestro Hoffy thinks he knows better, though, and he goes on to a set of intermediates. He's going to be falling down into 12th position, maybe even 13th, as the ghosted car of Kev Genetics gets past. And I still don't think it's really time for the intermediates yet. What are Johan, Jan Thaler, and Byblu going to do at this stage? Because surely they're going to have to pit.
Yeah, all three of them have to pit before the last lap. Otherwise, they will probably get disqualified by the game. Now, another thing, Risky, I was talking about how good of a situation it is, but I totally forgot that he's not looking good in the penalty department. So everything is going to kick off due to penalties, kind of like what you said about before when Tom was talking about how penalties are going to be an issue. Because Risky almost goes into the back of Johan. And now those 8-lap fresher mediums are definitely going to work. But 18 seconds again is Risky losing the rear end a little bit. That 18 seconds, I mean, it could be enough if some of these drivers have to pit. I mean, the likes of Johan, who hasn't pitted, is going to have to. So he might be able to get the 18-second gap that he needs based off of that pit stop alone. But it is a very tall order. There goes Johan into the pits, Risky into the pits as well. So is Norbert and Patrick onto intermediate tires. Tom 97 stays out on his old mediums. Is this going to hurt him? Could he lose too much time where Norbert Jacob could come back in and possibly get an undercut here? A lot of drivers in the pits.
The margin was 5 and a bit seconds when Norbert Jacob came into the pits. That was the gap between himself and Tom 97. Tom now has a big decision to make, because if he stays out on mediums, there's a chance he still makes it to the end before Norbert Jacob. There's not that long left to go, and the rain is still not coming down that hard. It is now time to be on intermediate tires. It's pretty clear that the Inters are faster now. They're not hugely faster, but they are faster. Tom, I doubt he's going to lose 5 and a bit seconds on the course of this in-lap here, and I think the right decision from him would be to pit. But when he's got a 20-second margin to Norbert Jacob right now, there's going to be something in the back of his mind telling him, but what if you just stayed out? What if you just ended the race on these medium tires? Maybe that would work for you, but no. He is going to come into the pit lane. That's sensible stuff from him, and I think he should have enough margin to the cars behind not to worry about it too much. Jan Thaler picks up his first 3-second time penalty of the race. That's a shame for him because he'd been clean up until this point. F1 Racer is still out there on 23-lap-old medium tires. Christian Sendel, Corsac, and Fernandez all out there as well. Tom 97 in the pits. He's on to his inters. He's on the pit lane exit already, and I think he's going to be fine.
Yeah, it looks like he's just going to hold on as he gets up to speed there. Yeah, you can see he's going to have 2 seconds to Norbert Jacob with 2 laps to go. Corsac, meanwhile, staying out on track on those 10-lap-old softs. Him and Fernandez, the only 2 drivers left on those dry tires, really pulling a gamble right here. But they also have 12 and 9 seconds of penalties respectively. So they're going all for nothing. I'm sure they have a little bit of grip left. But at the end of Sector 2 last lap, Tom was over 7 seconds slower than his dry best lap of the race. So it's got to be a nightmare for the guys on dries still.
Yeah, and the thing about Corsac and Fernandez staying out is that it's actually going to have implications in Johan's attempts to get a podium here. Because Johan was just about within the 6 seconds required to steal a podium away from Patrick come the end of this race. But now, having to get past Fernandez and soon he'll have to get past Corsac as well, that's going to delay him. And he's starting to fall a bit further away now from Patrick. So he's got to be careful that he makes his way up through this traffic nice and quickly. Risky is also there between the 2 drivers, but he's going to be pretty quick on his fresh intermediate tires. So that is potentially an implication that maybe Corsac and Fernandez weren't necessarily intending on right now. Here comes Johan on the rear wing of Corsac, and he's going to breeze past on the run down towards the chicane. That's basically losing no time whatsoever there for the Haas driver. He's up into 5th, and he's still critically within 6 seconds of Patrick.
Yes, it's looking like Johan is going to have an absolutely miraculous return to AOR here after being injured for a few races and missing a bunch of action. He's coming back, starting towards the back. He was outside the top 10, and as long as he keeps clean on this final lap, he's going to steal a podium. It's going to be absolutely magnificent. He's just got to keep it together. The Frenchman, for 2 more sectors, what can he do? Meanwhile, up front, it's all Tom 97. He's got a sector and a corner to go, and Tom will have won 2 for 2 in his return to AOR. Some fantastic stuff with Norbert Jacob behind him, his former rival, once again back at it. 2 of them battling all race long with Tom 97 with the final chicane to go, looking to seal another race victory.
Yeah, 2 proven race winners thus far this season. But it looks like Tom 97 is going to be the one to take another race win. His 2nd of the season, his 2nd on the bounce as he makes it through that final chicane. That was his last chance to pick up that extra time penalty. He didn't pick it up, so he will claim victory here in Canada. Fantastic drive from Tom 97. Great strategic stuff, had the pace when he needed to. Norbert Jacob put up staunch opposition, but he couldn't take it at the end. Finishes 3.3 seconds down then on Tom 97. Johan steals that podium, as you mentioned, and I believe that's going to be his 1st of the season, so congratulations to him. Patrick is denied his 1st podium of the season, as instead of that he gets his 3rd 4th place finish, and Jan Thaler making it up into 5th when it comes down to the penalties. He could be relatively happy with that, considering he started all the way down at the back of the grid.
Yes, great race by Jan and Johan. So that is your final results there. Tom 97, Norbert Jacob, and Johan, the top 3 on the podium. 3 different nationalities on the podium. 3 drivers who haven't been on, well, Tom was there last week, but all 3 of them, you know, it's a relatively new podium for this season with Tom on top. Fantastic stuff from Canada. I didn't think we'd get the rain. You know, I kind of forgot to re-ask about the weather forecast, and it turns out it was exactly the same as what it was supposed to be originally. So chaotic stuff there, as at the end the rain came down just hard enough to justify the inters and create a little bit more chaos for us.
Yeah, and that was desperately needed as well for the likes of Jan Thaler and Johan, who, they were banking on that rain coming just about in time when they were mediums to mediums. It did indeed come just about in time in the end for them. So thankfully, they have been sorted out with the race result that they would like. Obviously, they'd like to be as high up as possible, but Johan can be very happy with the podium, and Jan Thaler, considering qualifying, will be very pleased with 5th as well. Blue can also be very happy with 6th. I don't think I said his name almost once over the course of the race, but he was quietly having a very, very good run. Ended up only about a 1/10 of a second shy of Jan Thaler once the penalties were factored in. And he started from 15th, also on the back row of the grid, just like Jan. So great recovery drive from him to move up 9 positions over the course of the race.
Yep, so as always, I like to ask, who is your driver of the day? There's a lot of candidates here, and I know who I'm thinking about, but I want to know who you think is your driver of the day.
I mean, if we're talking about who I think the best driver was here today, I do think it has to be Tom 97. I think he drove really, really well, and he didn't get pole. He had to fight with Norbert Jacob back and forth, and he did amazingly. But if you're thinking of the more typical sort of driver of the day choice, Johan, for me, drove a fantastic race, kept it clean. Only 2 drivers didn't get penalties over the course of that race, and one of those was Kev Genetics, who wasn't even controlling his car for like half the race. So Johan keeping it clean, nabbing that podium, fantastic drive from him.
Yeah, I do have to agree. I mean, outside of, just dominant performance, it would be Tom 97. But yeah, Johan coming from 13th to 3rd on the grid. Only 11 seconds off of Tom from the race victory, and he was a lot farther down the order. He was really fast in that middle stint of the race, and the Frenchman had an absolutely fantastic drive up to 3rd. Jan Thaler and Blue as well, though. I mean, you could argue the same exact thing for them because they did start farther down the order. But one other driver I was really excited to watch today was Risky. I mean, yeah, he picked up a lot of time penalties, but he's learning to drive without the racing line, and he did a fantastic job at it all, and he gave us a lot of action. And I look forward to seeing what the Mercedes driver can do next week in the final round at Brazil. We do have actually a decent amount of drivers who would like a post-race interview. So this should be some exciting stuff. We got Johan, Blue, and Risky. We're just going to go from top to bottom from what I see. We'll bring on in Risky momentarily. And we'll hear from him and figure out what his thoughts on the race, and we'll see what he has to say. Just give me 1 sec to move him over.
Be interesting to talk to Risky actually about his first race. Without the racing line, as that is always something I know the pain of that. I drove with racing line for far too long, got it ingrained in my memory, and then it was very, very difficult to adapt to drive without it. So I imagine Risky's going through a similar sort of situation right now, and with all those time penalties, that obviously didn't work out all that well for him in that regard, but the pace was certainly there, as you mentioned. So it's the promising foundations. It's what you need. As long as the pace is still there, that is the most important thing when it comes to that front.
All right. I do agree. All right, let's bring him on over now. Hey, hello there, Risky. How are you feeling after your first race here in Tier 1 in AOR?
Very mixed feelings. I thought I had really good pace this race, and my PB around here in qualifying was like 6/10 quicker than what I actually did. So qualifying was very disappointing. My start was very good, but then it all kind of came to blows with track limits.
I mean, track limits definitely was a factor, but that aside, you had a fantastic race. I mean, you were giving action left and right. On the first stint, you might have been the fastest car out on track, and that's all with this being your first race without racing line. What was going through your head on the first few laps when you were kind of missing braking points? So, were you nervous, or were you just plowing through it?
Yeah, I was actually. To be fair, coming into this race, obviously we got some really good drivers in this league, and I really wanted to make a good impression. Missing braking points is just kind of a bit of nerves and getting into the rhythm of it. But my whole mindset was after qualifying was P9, right? That's not good enough. So I wanted to get up because I knew I should be around the P4 mark. With a perfect lap, maybe even higher, but perfect laps don't come around that often. So my whole mentality was just aggressive. It's my first race, but I want to make an impact. And I just had the best start I ever got in my life. It's a short run, and I gained 2 positions. And then I just kept picking people off and until wing damage, and then the race just kind of spiraled downhill from there. But it's encouraging, but also I would have liked to get a better result.
I got one more question before I'll pass the mic to Jacob. You mentioned just now wing damage. We saw you pit pretty early towards the end. What happened to trigger the wing damage? Because we didn't get to see it on screen. Talk us through that incident.
Well, I got wing damage on that 3 from the 6, like that turn 6-7 combo just before the back straight, which is really, really slippy. If you guys have driven it, you know how slippy it is. And then I got yellow wing damage from Wall of Champions. And to be honest, the undercut was so powerful. I lost 2 positions from the undercut. I decided it was worth a gamble and to swap positions, to swap onto the medium tires, even though I knew rain was coming. It kind of paid off, but then again, penalties, are the painful. Penalties are really painful around Canada. So in the end, I don't think I could have done anything else. I mean, my pace was really good, but my consistency was awful today, and that's certainly gonna have to be something I need to improve on for Brazil.
Gotcha. Jacob, you got any questions for him here?
Well, yeah, speaking of Brazil, I mean, is that a track that you're looking forward to racing on for this final race of the season? How does it compare to how you feel about Canada?
It's my best track by a long way. By a long way. I was racing Chanakinchi around Brazil, and I was keeping up, like a couple of tenths behind. I mean, it's a very one-off. It's not a track I'm the best at. It's not like I can perform like that at every single track on the Canada by any means, but Brazil is by far my best track. So I'm really hoping to push up there, and also it's less punishing if you're not consistent. Let's say the track limits there aren't usually a problem for me, but it's my best track by far. So I'm super excited for next Sunday, and I'm certainly going to be putting in a lot of practice to try and get up there.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll see our 5th race winner of the season. Congratulations on the race. Obviously, it didn't necessarily go your way in terms of the penalties, but you definitely gave a good account of yourself, particularly in the opening stint with your pace. So congratulations on that.
Cheers. Thank you very much, dude.
Yep, congratulations, and we look forward to next week. Hope you have a wonderful evening and a happy, safe rest of your week.
You too, dude. Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers. All right, that was the voice of Risky. It was good to hear him. I mean, I do agree with him in the fact that, yeah, penalties did cost him, but I mean, wow, I'm excited for next week. I mean, he showed some fantastic face here, and if he thinks that that's the track that he's even better at, oh boy, I think we're going to have ourselves a beautiful and amazing fight in Brazil. I don't know other way to put it.
Yeah, the lad knows how to build hype, shall we say. That was good. I'm very much looking forward to that now.
Yeah. So now we're actually going to bring in both Johan and Blue. So the two of them, they're part of the same team, Thyssen, or Thyssen, I believe is how it's pronounced. The two of them want to be interviewed together, so we can go ahead and get a little bit of hear from both of them. We can hear from Johan in his podium, his first podium of the season, but also Blue is the teammates with Lenny, and I believe that they were trying to seal out the Constructors' Championship, but because Mexico wasn't up, I didn't get a chance to see the gap that they had to the McLaren team. But they might have done enough to get this race, if I am correct. Yes, I believe they did win the Constructors this way. So Renault is the Season 21 Constructors champion for Tier 1. So we'll go ahead and bring them on in now. Hello there, Johan and Blue. How are you guys feeling after that chaotic race?
Very happy, very happy. I didn't finishing P3 coming into this race, but it's so great.
So walk us through. You started towards the back. Yeah, we'll go Johan first because both of you guys did start towards the back. Talk us through your just charge through the field. Like, what was going through your head? Did you just feel like you just didn't have good qualifying and the race was just a lot better? You just feel like you were able to capitalize on things? Talk us through your race.
Quali was not bad because me and Bible decided to start on mediums because we felt like soft tires were too bad to make long stint on them. So we decided to start on medium, which caused a quite bad position at the start. But I think the pace was very nice. Managed to do some overtake and we had the right strategy by doing medium inter, which was pretty much the quickest, I think. So we had an advantage and a pretty big advantage over the guys starting in softs or doing medium soft, for example. So I did manage my race pretty much perfectly. Didn't take any penalty. My errors was okay. My fuel was okay. My tires were okay. Nothing bad. Actually, I couldn't do any better. So I cannot be less happy than what I am today.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Blue, what about you? Do you feel the same way about your race and how it went?
Yeah, exactly. Because I messed up my quali lap in mediums, but in the start it was in same result because I stayed last for 6 laps, I think, and patience was very key in this race.
Yeah.
And rain was not expected at first, but it saved us a lot because like medium softs was the best strategy by far to finish on inter tire, and yeah, softs were not our strength. So yeah, medium were pretty good, and unfortunately for me, I took 6 seconds of time penalty, but yeah, it's something I need to work on. I'm happy for Yuan and myself as well, and yeah, we work together and we can perform together. It's better like that.
Gotcha.
And for championship, for the championship of teams championship for Renault, Lenny and I think won it because Feller didn't add a teammate today, so I think we won it.
I do believe so too. We were doing the math. So as of before Mexico, since the Mexico standings haven't been updated, you guys had a 72-point lead. Now Failer didn't score any points, or he did. If he did, it was so low. But Lenny was up towards the front, so you got a bunch of points from there. And you and Jan were about on par this race. So I think it's definitely safe to say that Renault did win the Constructors' Championship, and you guys won it by a margin. So congratulations. I mean, it's been a really good season for the two of you, and you got Brazil coming up. Talk us through that. Like, is that your goal all along to go for the constructors, or?
Nope, absolutely not. We came here like first impression of world-class league, and because we race in French leagues and nothing else, so it first impression and couldn't go better. So yeah, it's cool.
You guys have been very exciting all season to watch, that's for sure.
Thank you.
Now, another thing I want to bring up before I pass the mic to Jacob here is, I know going through the Discord that, Johan, you were not excited at all for this track. You were like, oh, this is such a bad track. And then you came and got third. Has your opinion maybe changed now that you got that race over with?
Maybe I'm going to like this track a little better, but just to say, the first practice session I did, I took like 24 seconds of penalty on a 50% race. So that's quite funny to say that I finished without taking any. And my pace was pretty much, I don't know why, but better than everything I did in practice. So maybe race pressure made me perform better, which could be quite surprising, but I think it worked this way today. And this track is very awful because it's I don't know, the way you have to cut the curbs doesn't feel natural, and I just don't like racing on this track. But guess what? It turned well for me tonight, so I have to be happy.
Yeah.
I cannot be myself.
Definitely great. I mean, it was great to see. I guess you got all your penalties out in practice, which is definitely the best way to go about it. Jacob, you got any questions?
Yeah, I guess just one final question, because you're talking about, going for medium, soft was the initial intention for the strategy for you both. Towards the end, when the rain started to come down, it took a while before it got to intermediate conditions. Yeah. Were you guys worried that it wasn't going to get to inters at all and that you were going to have to make an extra pit stop, or were you always kind of feeling safe in the knowledge that the inters would come out?
At first, this strategy wasn't intended. I mean, we never intended to be at this place in the field. So I don't think we were worried. We knew that when we saw the first raindrops, we knew that we had to finish on inters. It was impossible to not finish on inters with 6 laps of rain. And Jeff also told us that the rain would intensify. So I mean, it was very unlikely to finish on dry tires. But yes, some part of me was a bit worried, to be fair. And also tires were really starting to struggle because we pitted lap 13, if I remember well. And we had I had more than 60% wear on the tires, and because this track is very difficult on traction zone, it was starting to get very slippery and very tricky. And but still managed to bring it P3. So yeah. And a very nice race from Bible as well.
Well, congratulations on the podium and on your very good finish as well, Blue. And good stuff in the race.
Yep. Congratulations, guys, on the podium and the constructors win. We hope you guys have a nice, safe, and happy weekend. We cannot wait to see you guys next week on one final time around Brazil. That should be very exciting, and I hope you guys are just as excited as we are here in the commentary booth.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well,
I like Brazil.
For sure.
That is good to hear.
Track.
So we'll talk to you guys later and have, like I said, have a safe and happy week.
Yep. Thank you. See ya.
Cheers. All right. That was the voices of Johan and Blue, and we actually do have one more interview in the form of Tom97. So he has decided to be a late joiner to the Ready for Interview group, so we'll get him in here as well, getting everyone for the post-race interviews today, Jacob.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be nice to speak to Tom as well. Considering he was the race winner after all, it'd be nice to get his opinion on how that race went.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be nice to hear his thoughts on it as well. Didn't really get a chance to hear from him last season, but hey, I'll take it in round 11 in season 21. Let's go ahead and bring him on over now. Hello there, Tom. How are you feeling after that race?
Quite good. It was an enjoyable race, and strategy was perfect.
Now, going into the initial qualifying session, you knew that there was going to be rain towards the end. Was it the same way for this race going in? Did you have any concerns? Talk us through it.
No, I treated it like a completely dry session. It looked like the rain was going to arrive fairly late, so it didn't really factor into my plans. Qualifying wasn't ideal. I had some stream issues myself, so I only got 2 runs in qualifying. which wasn't ideal. I ran out of time for a third one. So that aside, qualifying went well. Car was working good, had a good balance, and I knew I had pace. So in the race, I knew what I had to do. I was planning for the rain, and I could have gone to the end if I had to on mediums. I had tires left, so yeah, planned out, worked out okay.
Yeah, I mean, you were absolutely electric with how you stored the battery. Did you wait? Like, was there a certain strategy with how long you waited to make the move? Because there were times when you were right on the rear bumper of Norbert up ahead, and it just seemed like you had the opportunity to make the move and you didn't. And then all of a sudden, you know, with 15, 16 lap old tires, you just blasted it. Was that the plan all along, or you're just kind of, you know, doing your thing?
There was 2 attempts, so I tried it once, didn't quite shake him off. So I was like, okay, it's all good. We'll just rein it in. I didn't drain my ERS because I had a feeling I probably wouldn't drop Norbert. He had pretty decent pace, but I knew I had 2 lap fresher tires. I went long in the first stint by 2 laps on purpose. I would have done it had we not restarted anyway. It didn't change my plans, but obviously starting on fresh softs helped that plan a little bit more. But yeah, went 2 laps long on purpose on the first stint so that I had better tires in case also the rain arrived. And yeah, I had that advantage. So once I tried it the first time, wasn't able to pull away from Norbert, so I was like, okay, I'll just sit behind, wait for a few more laps and see when the time is right. And then the second time around, I could see he was starting to make a few errors and struggle a bit more. And I could tell he was also saving ERS because he wasn't fast in the straight. So I was like, okay, he's pretty low on energy. He's making mistakes. It's time to go again. And the second time, I just bolted, had better tires at that time, obviously. And he must have been struggling on tyre wear. So I was able to drop him out of the DRS range. And the rest is history.
The rest is history indeed. I want to pass the microphone to Jacob here. You got any questions for Tom?
Well, yeah, I mean, you kind of partially answered it there, but I was wondering because a big sort of narrative of the race from our perspective, from what we could see, was that you were maintaining your ERS really, really well. And Norbert was always, ever since the first pit stops, he was around 40% below you. Were you aware of how much he was struggling relative to you in terms of ERS? Did you have that sort of information in that depth, or was it just what you could see on the straights?
No, actually, I didn't. So normally I'll have a spotter or something. Didn't have one today. No big deal, but I kind of just in my head assumed the worst and just thought, okay, he's probably got 80%, 90%. It's all good. I was reluctant to use mine for that reason, so I was trying to hold on as much as I could. I even tried to drop him the first time around without really using much ERS. So yeah, I just in those scenarios when I don't really know, I just assume he's probably got full charge. I could tell he was saving at certain points because when he's in front of me, like you mentioned, when I could have passed him but I didn't, I could tell he was just saving. So I knew he probably had a respectable amount. He's lighting out a flash once, which is also like a telltale sign. So yeah, it was okay. I managed it, and I was expecting him to have full charge just in case, anyways, basically.
And then also just thinking about the final lap, and I think the answer to this will probably be no way. But when you, because obviously you pitted a lap later than Norbert, you had a big margin to him before the pit stop, of course. Was there a part of you that was thinking maybe I'll just go to the end on these mediums because I have this huge margin and the rain is still only just about getting to inters, or were you always going to pit at the end of that lap?
There was a moment where I was like, you know what, I probably could go, but because the conditions were taking a long time to turn, they never really fully went to intermediates. The track still had that kind of shiny glossiness to it, which is like an in-between phase, and the inters didn't feel that great. So I was seriously considering it. My mediums were about 72% heading on to the last 2 laps, so I would have made it on tyres probably. But to be fair, that extra lap, when I was out by myself, the track did turn just enough where I was like, okay, I'm just going to pit. I've got the gap. I'm okay. I don't need to like throw this away. I was on 4 warnings at the time, so I was like, I'm just gonna pit, play it safe. No need to risk it. I could have done because I'm not fighting for anything in the championship. I'm just a reserve driver, but I wanted the win, and I want next week's win as well.
And next week's win as well. And I guess that's my final question then. Brazil next week. That a track you're looking forward to?
Yeah, it'll be good fun. I think similar to today. I think the ice trains could play a part in terms of how the race is structured. I'll try and do my bit, see if I can find a bit of pace. I tend to struggle in the middle sector a little bit with the traction zones. That's something I need to work on. So I'll see if I can improve around there. But definitely hoping to, I won the last 2, hoping to make it a hat trick and end F1 2020 on a high.
Absolutely. 3 race wins in a row would be the perfect way to end. Tom97, congratulations on your win today, your second one in a row, and thank you very much for the interview.
Yep, cheers and great work, both of you. Fizzy, and I've been carrying it solo for most of the season, so good job on that. Thank you. Jacob, not sure if you're here next week, but if not, then good job this year as well, mate.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I will be here next week, so I'll be able to see you take your 3rd win in a row, of course.
I like that attitude.
Yep, we'll have to wait and see what next week brings us. Tom, thank you once again. Have a safe and happy rest of your week, and we look forward to seeing you in Brazil.
Yep, and have a good evening, guys, or good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Cheers.
So that was our last interview for the day. One thing I was going to ask him, but I think he answered it for me, was last season around in Brazil, he decided to go for a last to first challenge, and he ended up in 3rd, just over 2 seconds off the race victory. But with how he was talking there, I would think it's safe to say he's not going to do that, and he might go for the battle.
He wants the win. He wants that win. He wants that 3 wins on the bounce to round out F1 2020. I could see that would be a very, very satisfactory end to the game cycle for sure.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be definitely a lot more of a challenge this time around, because last time we knew we had Failer and Norbert Jakob just battling the whole race, and those were the top 2. But this time around, you're going to have to account for not only them. You got Christian Sendel, who's, I mean, outside today, he's had some really good form. And then, of course, we have our champion, Lenny PNR, who I'm sure is going to come back, and I'm sure he's going to want one more win on his belt. So we might have ourselves a nice treat next week. And then we have the likes of Risky and the T-Soon guys, who all seem to be excited for Brazil as well. So I think next week's probably going to be the highlight of the season for sure.
Yeah, it does seem like a lot of drivers looking forward to it. Everyone seems to be happy about Brazil being the final track. Everyone always likes Interlagos, and I'm looking forward to it as well.
Yep, I agree. Well, thank you for joining me, and I do look forward to being back here next week one last time for this season and on this game, at least for me. We thank you, everyone, for watching this feature presentation of Apex Online Racing Hype Energy Formula 1 League, round number 11 here in Canada for the Canadian Grand Prix. And we hope you join us next week as we go around Interlagos, like we said, one last time for the Brazilian Grand Prix on F1 2020. I am Fizzymon, and alongside me is Jacob, and we thank you very much for watching. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Apex